2023 Town of Richmond meeting of the Water and Sewer Commission. Welcome, everybody. Public comment?
It's not raining.
It's yay! Hope it drives the mosquitoes away. Additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? Okay, moving right along. First on the agenda, or third on the agenda, approval of minutes. So that's the minutes from August
22nd,
August the 21st,
22nd.
22nd, 2023.
Morgan, this is David. I move to approve the minutes as presented for the August 22nd Water and Sewer Commission meeting.
Do I have a second?
This is Bard. I will second that.
Okay, discussion, corrections, deletions. All right.
I will point out it is the 21st, I believe. It's that Monday, right?
It was Monday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry for the late get on that. Just heard that and saw that. So
That's what I say.
So, all right, calling for a vote on approval of the minutes. All in favor? Say aye.
This is
Aye.
Aaron. I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
Morgan, aye. Yeah, he's gonna skip that. Okay.
Sorry, I have myself muted again. This is Jay.
All right.
Hi, Jay.
The minutes have been approved. Next on the agenda are warrants. And I think we have about 4 warrants. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we usually just approve them all in one batch unless
Okay.
there's questions on anything specifically. Oh, yes, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 warrants.
For warrants. So there is warrant 2930 or 22-26057. Warrant. Looks like a description to transfer money for. It's me. I'm sorry. Turn my phone off, but it still comes through my.
Would you like me to share screen? If you want to walk through them, I can pop them quick.
This I think is a transfer for 494153. Warrant 21936 for 950.05, and then warrant. Again for 36,438.81. Anybody would like to make a motion to approve the warrants?
I make a motion to approve the warrants as presented. This is Jay.
Do you have a second?
This is David. I'll second.
Okay, discussion, questions? No discussions or questions. This is calling for a vote on approving the warrants as presented.
Aaron. I.
Jay, I. Jay, I.
Morgan, aye. The warrants have been approved, and then I think there's just one purchase order. Is that correct, Josh?
That is correct.
From Liquid Engineering Corp, $25,073.00 for grid B mixing system. And this is to replace the one we have.
So it's to replace the one that's not working in the water tank. We've decided to go with that particular mixer because we have one up there now that's given us not a single bit of problem since we installed it, and it is a 3-phase mixer.
And this one's 3-phase.
And this is an exact mate to it, so we've decided to replace the other one with that. The price of this mixer is just the mixer. The installation is going to be done by the company when we have the tank cleaned, a different company.
With the diver, right?
The diver.
Yes,
Yeah.
with
Okay.
diver.
Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the purchase order for $25,073.00?
This is Aaron. I move to approve the purchase order number 4490.
Have a second?
This is Jay, second. This is Jay, second.
A second the motion.
Just a comment before we vote. I'm intrigued that our supply line ends in Billings, Montana.
Well, that. Yeah.
We can have Jay bring it back.
Yeah, oh, Jay's got,
For
yes.
what it's worth, I avoided Billings very carefully. I know people who live there and they say it's like the zero circle of hell.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, all right, calling for a vote to approve purchase order 4490.
This is Aaron, I.
David, I.
Bard, aye.
J.I.
Morgan, I. Purchase order has been approved. Okay, so of all these items. And that's it, I think.
That's it. On to next agenda item.
Okay, next on the items for presentation or discussion, update on Gateway Sewer expansion.
You want to give it a brief overview?
We have 3 bullets here, which are succinct.
Two of which I stole from your email. They look very familiar, right? So Bard and I met with Joey Reep and MMU USD Facilities Director Phil Graff 2 weeks ago to follow up on this project. The school has yet to repair or replace the leaking sewer line that we talked about at the last meeting. They did a pressure test, it failed that pressure test, so they're aware of it. They're looking to schedule that repair. They know it could be a little bit challenging to find exactly where it's failing, but they are aware and working on trying to get it repaired before the winter. Once the line is repaired, it'll be needed to be tested and evaluated, and the commission can make a determination at that point if they'd like to take over the line or not. And it might need to also be an evaluation by an engineer. We also talked about the Richmond Land Trust easement. I know that the Land Trust still has yet to discuss this with the full commission. And we're going to come back to talk about what the Richmond Land Trust felt as a whole body about the easement that's over their land and what it can and can't do with service for the sewer line over the reefs or potentially beyond. And the reefs do have a plan to connect to the school, connect up to our line, either through the school line or past the school and all the way to School Street and Jericho Road. So they're ready to go kind of either way. And you can expand.
I would only add 2 comments around the first bullet about yet to repair or replace the leaking line. It's probably obvious to all of us that dismantling a sewage line when school is in session is kind of contraindicated. So they're gonna have to pick a window, for investigation and repair that's probably like a long weekend or a holiday. You literally don't want to be without sewage service in a school with, or when you 100 kids.
I mean, they can do it if they use those like B&B that would just pump out and dump into our manhole. But I mean, it's doable, but it was much easier in the summer.
And the other thing I'll say is, that this sort of hit them at about the time that they were doing a whole bunch of pick list items for opening schools, multiple schools. It's the district's plan, not just a single school. So it sort of fits into all of that about what do they have to deal with and when. And then around the 4th, and I don't want to speak for the Reefs, but I think they've also, they have at least concept plans for something other than the sewer and or water going there, some other kind of development. So the plans are still, it would seem, in some form of abeyance. But I won't speak for the Reefs, that's just the state sort of beyond it.
Okay,
And we invited reps from the Richmond Land Trust to just give us an update on how they're viewing it. As I understand, it may not have had a chance to talk about it. So what the context and timeline might look like for them. Because a reminder for the easement, it's currently specifically stated, without it in front of me going off memory, about benefiting a single property, the Reeves property, from which it was separated. And so if there were going to be a line through there serving other properties and a line that was maintained by the town, there would be an issue of scope and also town easements, because you'd have to access it for operation and maintenance in some fashion, I think.
I'm happy to just give a brief update on behalf of the land trust, if that's.
Sure.
kind of like
And maybe come forward and tell us who you are again.
Of course.
Just to be,
To the microphone.
it's a microphone there on the.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Hi, everybody. Jeremy Hoff. I'm the board chair of the Richmond Land Trust. And Gary Bresser is with me. Just, on a very high level, we met back in the spring. Can't remember what month it was, late spring. We did take this issue back to our full board. And the message we got was general support conceptually. And the board designated several members to just investigate the issue further and try to figure out what type of limitations, conditions, etc. We might require and that our easement holder might require to expand the scope of the line. We own the property. The Vermont Housing Conservation Board holds an easement on the property. So as well as getting the land trust consent, we need to get the easement holders consent. Quite candidly, with everybody's summer schedules, we haven't made a whole lot of forward progress, but it is still on our agenda. There's a few of us that are meeting later this evening to continue that discussion. So I'm optimistic within a couple of months, we'll get back to you with something substantive. And that's really where we are, and happy to hear any other updates from others that would help inform our deliberations and consideration of the topic.
Have you talked to the REAPs recently, or?
We have not been contacted by the REAPs, no.
Okay.
I would say I tried to set up a meeting with Bob. And he didn't get back to me. I was meeting with Bard a little later. I asked Bard to try to invite, well, you did invite the REAPs and they wouldn't come to that meeting. So it's been a little frustrating from my standpoint that it should be a three-party discussion, not just us. And it doesn't seem to be any willingness to do that. I do have a few questions that have come up in discussions. It'd be nice if you have an answer for. One was, and they may seem unrelated, but there were questions that came up. Do you know the route, number one? Do you know if it's going to be dug with an excavator or put in all underground? If it's, pushing the pipe down the hill. If it is all pushed in, will there need to be a midpoint where you dig and, they can only go so far by pushing? I think it's be nice to know if it really is going to go underground on school property and surface on REAPs. Might be a little different thing. What size pipe is under discussion? Are you talking about a pipe that will service the mobile home park? If so, what is that size, and can you push a pipe that size, or does that mean you're gonna have to dig?
Carrie, when you say push a pipe, you mean directional bore?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, are these things been discussed, or?
The top, are you asking me?
No,
Okay.
I'm not, anybody.
But you
but-
can answer if you like.
They're not novel questions, they have come up before, but I don't know that they've been answered.
It
We've
seems
been
like,
talking about an 8-inch. We've been talking about 8 inches because we want to be able to provide our dream is to be able to supply hydrants all the way out the interstate. Right now, I'd say the mobile home park isn't really in the picture. And if we did want to do the mobile home park, last I heard, 8 would probably still work, but right now that's not the focus. The 8 was just in order to get out to the interstate.
Jay, though, this is Bart, I think you're describing water now.
Yeah.
The 8-inch line
You're
for water, and just
Right,
for.
you're right.
for the mobile home park has always said they got plenty of water coming out of the hill, so we're not interested
Right.
in water. And we're not interested in sewer unless it was strikingly more affordable than the first economic.
No, you're right. I was once again getting the two confused, which is a bad thing to do.
And so the follow up on that, the question though is, what is the proposed size of the sewage line? And deferred to engineers, we haven't, last I knew, I don't think we had detailed engineering plans on the up and down the hill.
I mean,
But-
isn't that totally up to the Reeves? I mean, their engineering plan.
And the question is volume, because there's a fork in the road in distant conversations here at the commission, expressed interest, if we're gonna put it in there and the town's gonna take it over, it should be capable of serving other properties in the gateway, some of whom have expressed interest in septic or sewage lines. And people have made conversation, or the point in conversation in this commission in the past, that it's actually a social and public health good to connect properties to a wastewater treatment plant as opposed to put more and more septic fields out in the gateway.
Right.
The, when we were looking going down Route 2, what were the two different sizes?
I don't recall.
Was it, was 2-inch and 4-inch?
It doesn't,
Don't recall.
that doesn't
That's
sound right.
You think it would have been a 4-inch and then,
At least a minimal of 4
4
inch.
inch.
It should have been probably.
and then an 8-inch to get to the, if it was going all the way to the mobile home? Or,
Yeah, I would assume with the extra sewage.
I think for fire hydrants, it has to be eight
well, we're talking about
Well,
sewer,
Yeah,
for water, and I think sewer has to be bigger, doesn't it, than water?
not necessarily.
not necessarily. On a force main, you can.
Do it
I mean,
You have
don't
grinder
have to.
pumps and a force main.
Right.
Right, in 2-inch, but.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Cochrane Road has a force main where it's 2 inch.
But you're right, on a gravity feed, the town requires 8-inch sewer.
But a force main going uphill, if memory serves us right, it was 4 to 6 inches. I kind of think it was 4. Just because of grinder pumps and then you're pushing it uphill. But this, the detailed engineering spec of what it would take, we could look that up. To the degree we have preliminary engineering from way back when. And a more cogent question is probably, if it's there, can it be directionally bored versus surface disruption rate? And that's an engineering question. What's the maximum size for horizontal boring? I'm assuming there is one. Like, you can't put a 2-foot pipe through horizontal.
No, but you can do 8, you can do 8.
Up to 8?
I'm almost 100% sure.
Oh, I know it, this is maybe unrelated, though Ellen Street is directional board 18-inch lines before, so
Really?
miles of it.
So let's presume your interest in is in horizontal boring, and I think the conversations have been about horizontal boring, even though there's not a detailed site plan. So it's something you might contemplate, and I don't know if the REITs are here prepared to discuss it, but you know, it's something we might contemplate about what would installation look like. And I see Joy has her hand up.
Right.
Morgan.
Yes, Joy?
I do. I mean, I can't answer all of these questions specifically, but we would be building it to the town spec because the town would be taking it over. You're able to bore any size. However, it's cost prohibitive to do the entire thing that way. We would do it where it was necessary, which was mostly up that hill. Where it would go is in the easement that we already have, I would assume, with the land trust. And Gary, in terms of getting in touch with us, your text to Bob said you had an idea on how to get water and sewer to our property. You didn't ask to discuss it or ask on behalf of the land trust. So that's why Bob didn't get back to you. We're tired of waiting for you to deal with this.
Right, so,
How
So-
long ago did Josh contact the land trust to ask about this? I'm curious. When did the conversation start? It's been months, right?
Back in the spring.
April?
April,
Right, before summer. So
Is that a problem, Joy?
it is. It is. You guys have taken your time when this is something that we need to know whether or not you're going to do. And I think the Water and Sewer Commission feels the same way at this point. Can you guys confirm that?
yes, we'd like to see it move forward, I mean, but we have to have everybody on board, but you're correct, Joy.
I still say I feel this should be a 3-way discussion. The easement is with the REIPs. And the REIPs wouldn't meet with me when I was trying to move this forward.
But the easement would then be with the town. not with us, correct?
If that's what we agree to, the current easement is with you guys.
Just, from broad context, it's probably 4 ways. 'cause
Who's the
This
fourth?
school, yeah.
The school.
Right.
Okay,
So land trust, water sewer commission, Reeves school.
I thought you'd work
I
out
really,
with the school.
Go ahead, Joey.
The other.
I really think that this is between the town and the land trust, because you guys are the ones, we have an easement that's limited. You're the ones who want it to go further. And therefore, it's an easement that the town would have with the land trust. I don't know how that has anything to do with us. It's a whole new thing, right?
I mean, you're contemplating, I guess, relinquishing your easement rights and transferring them to the town. I don't know how everybody wouldn't want to participate in that conversation if the goal is to move it forward collectively.
Well, if someone had contacted us in that context, it would have been different, but that is not the way we were contacted.
Well, I only say I think we could get less than a quorum of the water sewer commission to meet with anybody about this, whether it's the land trust alone, land trust in the school, the land trust in the Reeps alone. Like, however we could move it forward, assuming it could move forward.
From the land trust perspective, though, from the legal perspective, there seems to be a step that the Reeps would relinquish their easement to the town,
That's the request from.
Abandon it.
or abandon
From
it.
a legal perspective, this is a legal.
But I mean, it would seem like the easiest thing is just to transfer it to somebody else.
I think that the scope of the easement that would be going to the town is so different from the Reeves easement. That we would want that one extinguished and a new easement put in its
Okay.
place to the town. But I don't think that's difficult mechanically to do.
Right.
So then it's what details would you want? And it seems like one of the things we might ask of the land trust board. And this involves then a fifth party of the BHCB. So there's like a couple of moving parts. What is it you'd want to see in an easement? And, say we want horizontal boring, not open pit construction, right?
Well, that's what we're meeting with tonight, to see if we can
Yeah. And there may be other things.
come up with that
you're
before,
interested.
we have our board meeting.
And that's the process that we're trying to go through now, which admittedly we, haven't been throttled down just working through those issues, but,
So if you're gonna meet again tonight, I'm sorry to keep jumping in.
No,
Morgan.
go ahead.
Maybe is follow-up after you meet tonight, follow up with Morgan and Josh and say, what are the next steps? We'd be ready to have a meeting with us or others, or, how do we move it forward?
I guess my expectation is that our subcommittee that's working on this needs to meet probably a couple more times. I think I said in my email that we probably take this back to the board at our October meeting. If we have information requests or need to consult with the subset of the Water and Sewer Commission between now and then, we can do that. And then at some point after our October meeting, I think we'd be prepared to have a more substantive, conversation, negotiation about it.
What the easement would look like.
Yeah, what the conditions might be on it, what the scope of it might be, what the easement might look like, yeah.
It carries a concern, if digging a trench is a lot less expensive than horizontal or boring, horizontal bore, I would call it, but boring is the disruption of the, through the land as far as erosion and habitat, or?
Well, the Reeps have the right to put the pipe through there by whatever means right now. So as Jeremy said, if we're gonna negotiate a new agreement with the town, we may wanna put some stipulations on how that's done. The land trust just had a major event down there, I kind of think it's by accommodating the new culvert that went through.
Under the interstate.
In that flash flood, the brook rerouted and goes through the runout of well, I haven't walked it, but I hear it's close to, might be in the way of the run out from the sledding hill. And with wetland regulations, we may not be able to put it back. So if we accommodate you guys and without some restrictions, and we get another event that might be caused by, digging a trench down that hill, which is a highly erodible hill.
Yeah.
Then we might not be able to repair that
Right.
fix either. So I think we want to be careful about how it's done.
Sure.
Particularly in light of erosion and heavy rainfalls, right? Maybe
Yeah.
we're seeing that in all different.
I guess I'm a little confused because you had said, I guess I'm a little confused because I thought that we were approaching the land trust because the REAPs had approached us to go to the school.
Mhm.
I guess I didn't realize that the commission, I realized we were exploring how we could help the REAPs make this happen, but I guess I didn't realize that the commission was necessarily decided to take over the line.
What is,
I
what is,
Didn't know that and I'm very new to this, so I'm asking questions because I don't know, but I guess I thought when we were contacting the land trust, it was to find out what the REAPs were able to do with their easement. I guess I didn't know that it was on the table for us to be
so
taking that.
what has changed here is extending the easement, as if I understand it, is just to the REAP's property, but if the town wants for others, the opportunity to connect to it past the REAPs, then that easement has to change.
And one other factor I point out is the town has a grant of $150,000 more or less from the Northern Regional Border Commission for the installation. That is not a grant to the REAPs, that's a grant to the town. So the only way that money can be spent is if it's a town fostered
Line.
project. And the town owns the
But-
line at the.
Go ahead, Joey.
And more importantly, we're not allowed to attach to a private line, which is the
Right.
school's line.
I
It
did know
has to
that.
be town owned.
Right, yeah, so there's a transfer of ownership of the school's sewer line and water line, that's.
And having had some experience of like the town taking over flawed projects, whether it's pipelines or roads, it's a mistake, in my opinion, to set up the current customers to buy sort of a used pipeline that then requires within a year, $200,000 worth of repair. So it's like buying a used car. You want your mechanic to go through it and say, what condition is it in? What repairs or maintenance can I expect before taking it over? And that speaks specifically to how we got to this with the school line and the leak that was discovered.
And we were
And
not,
Aaron,
we were not
Cool.
getting involved in that conversation between the REAPs and the school before, but now that we've discovered the leak.
Well,
Because like before, when we were talking about it, it was like, we're not gonna talk about it tonight because this is between the REAPs and the school. So are we now a little more involved because there are repairs that need to happen first?
From my perspective, we did talk about it. I don't remember saying that we wouldn't talk about it. What I remember is saying we would talk about it, but we're not paying for the inspection of the line.
Okay,
Or repairs.
for
Or
the repairs.
repairs of the line. So we're interested by talking about it, and we were talking but not walking or paying.
Okay.
Joey, you had another
can I
comment?
just say, right, Aaron, since we're getting you up to speed, one other thing to know is that the water line is owned by the town that goes all the way to the back of the school where we could connect. So that's already been installed and the town owns it.
That was all upgraded and yes, that is owned by the town.
Could you repeat that? I missed.
So there's a water line on the school property that was originally built and maintained by the town. If I remember correctly, it had a fire hydrant on it.
Mhm.
And one of the wrinkles was you're not supposed to have a private fire hydrant that you use for things like flooding a skating pond. Without a meter. And so after some back and forth, this is probably 10 years ago.
No, not even. 7 maybe.
that, like, there was an inspection and a takeover of that line to the equivalent of a curb cut, like to the hydrant, and then there's a point where the town line ends and the school lines start.
And is that what's contemplated with the sewer line at this point? Is you were talking about that as a separate issue with the school having to make repairs based on these, the leaks that were found, is that?
The school sewer line is not up to our code, what this town requires, because they know they have a leak in it. So we're not gonna take it over until that is fixed or until it maintains a pressure test for us. The water line was upgraded. And there was an extension of the water line to the back of the property at the school. And that was done several years ago.
I would assume the water line was probably done to town specs.
Yes, it was. It was completely upgraded to town specs.
But we don't know what specs the sewer line was installed.
No. And I was told that the sewer line wouldn't pass a pressure test and it didn't.
It didn't.
pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that
So
has
I
to be
feel-
fixed.
My information was pretty good there.
So is there a plan to replace that line so that, I mean,
That's
Joy was just talking about not being able to connect to a private line.
a discussion that the
school-
school has to have.
Yeah. Yeah, so the school has said they're working on repairing it.
Or potentially replacing it. It depends on what they
Yeah.
find. Like, nobody has dug up and looked at the line since it was put in place. Do we know what year?
I think 69.
Yeah.
Anyway, a while ago.
It was actually the 90s. It was replaced.
The sewer
We
line?
found the report. Yep, a PVC line in the 90s.
Oh.
I can share that with you. It's from Tyler Billingsley. When they did the work on the water line, they uncovered that, and we also found, I think it was Craig Coles did it, and we researched a lot about it to find out what the story was with that line. There is no plan that shows that work was done, but based on some research Bob did, that's where we got to.
Joy, nobody found a as-built survey of it then?
No,
No, but Tyler did inspect it. It crossed the water line when they did it, and there's a report that has his inspection in there when he saw it.
Okay, great, thank you. Cross the water line.
When we scoped it before we pressure tested it. I mean, it goes up and down.
Oh, you had said that, I remember.
And that's one reason we couldn't go the whole distance with the
Scope.
camera because it was full of water
Mm,
and it should have been drained. We drained it. So it holds water all the time and then it would not hold pressure when we pressure tested it.
And to be clear, in an ideal world, you have a consistent slope.
Should be,
So it's basically
yeah.
straight.
It's pretty obvious the bed that the pipe was laid in was not properly done.
So we have some more work to do.
Yeah.
In that part.
I mean, that's the complexity of this. It doesn't lend itself to quick resolution. That's part of my point, but yeah, you look at it in sections. If the reaps need to connect to a public line, but it's currently a private line, that needs to get dealt with. The land trust piece needs to get dealt with. It's
Joy, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
This, like,
Yeah.
putting myself in your position, I know you've been waiting patiently for like many years, but this sounds like a really long process. Is your other option faster?
Yep, could be done this year.
Okay.
the other option, meaning to just go directly to your property and not change the easement, not do anything to accommodate other people in the gateway. Is that what the other option is?
It
No,
sounds
actually, it's self-storage.
like there are options of where they can, I don't know.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Joy. What's the other option?
I said it's self-storage.
Like to have a,
Got it.
No need
Instead
for-
of housing.
And then pumping.
Yeah.
Well, there would be no need for any, it's be self-storage.
That would be the business they'd put there.
Right.
So you're not talking about.
Oh,
When you said
so they would-
self-storage, I went to a septic. Yeah, that's what my mind went to.
So they wouldn't
No.
require it.
It's to not even bring any water or sewer down and just be done.
Be a different business model.
For the-
Yep,
yeah.
10 years we got to this point. It's pretty sad.
Joy, are you guys prepared to just bypass the school line and go directly to the end of School Street? If that would make this process go faster?
That's kind of what I was asking.
So, but that's definitely something that we could do. But one of the things, every time we have these meetings, we get to the point and I say, but what's going on with the land trust? Because it's my understanding that the town is not going to take over the line if it can't go further than our property.
So even if they decided to, but they can't run it parallel. I don't think
Yeah, I think they
they
could.
could run it
I
parallel.
think the issue then. Right, so there's a couple questions, and if it just services the reefs and you don't change easement at all, then would the commission be willing to take over a line that's not servicing beyond the reefs and the gateway? Also at that point, if the commission doesn't take it over, I don't know if the NRBC grant would still be in play at that point, maybe not, probably not, because it's not a town project at that point, so that money would be off the table. And then, yeah, you could construct it from the reefs up the hill on the land trust easement all the way to the intersection with Jericho Road, and
You don't.
I think it would be fine.
Okay, well, that's.
The-
Yes, go
It's
ahead.
a
Joy.
longer line and it's a longer line then, and the grant is gone. I mean, that's like hundreds of thousands of dollars you're talking about.
Yep, those are the downsides, absolutely, and I
Right.
did not put that in that scope, that's a good scope to put it in.
Steve?
So really. What you're asking for is for the land trust to say that it is okay for you to put the line in with the caveat that the town takes it over and the expansion will go further.
Well, we've got it back all the way up because what Josh was saying, we don't know that we could get hundreds of thousands of dollars in this. What's that fund?
Northern borders.
Northern Borders.
What-
We wouldn't be able to get that money possibly if we didn't extend it past the reefs,
I actually think the 150 is in play for the reefs.
just for the reefs. Okay.
It
But
is.
it's got a town
Right.
bond.
Okay. I got you.
And there is interest of other residents and property owners in the gateway for service. So that's the other thing, you know. When people ask, what does the Water Sewer Commission want? My response is, well, what do the customers and potential future customers want? Because I'm already a customer.
Yeah.
So and then also thinking about the existing customer, one of the reasons we're kind of stuck is because our hands are tied by ordinance and policy about current users paying for expansion. So it's the new customers who pay for the expansion. So that's part of this wrinkle of then who are the new users and can they afford it? And that's why we don't currently have a line in Route 2, because it was too expensive for those new users to the tunes of many tens of thousands of dollars per property.
Yeah, it's just $1 million just to get the sewer to the reefs property, so. Just to their 2 million all the way down to the.
So recognizing we're really past time, we probably got what we wanted. Thank you for.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Showing up, say next steps, and maybe if there were questions that come up after tonight, or like, what about this, what about that, reach out and we could engage on those.
Okay.
Will do.
Thank you.
Nice to see you all.
Real quick, just because you asked about the sizing.
Oh, sorry.
No, just, I know you're going to a meeting. I looked it up. All we ever talked about was a 3-inch wastewater line. It was gonna be a force main. And then we looked at a 4-inch and a 12-inch water line. So for wastewater, I think we're talking 3-inch.
My memory must be failing me then. I thought we did talk about an 8-inch water line, but if it's 4 or 12, then it's 4 or 12.
There might have been an 8, but with the quick research I was able to do during the meeting, that's what we had pricing for.
Yeah, we better move forward here with.
And the 3-inch should take care of the mobile home park.
Yeah, from the engineering report, it was all the mobile home park with a low pressure force main.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Okay. So we need to, I guess we'll put that for the next agenda, the
It's a standing item.
standing item
Today.
and we, I guess to follow up with the school then. As far as repairs or,
Yeah, we'll see when they repair and when they get back to us, and we'll see if they follow back up after their meeting and what more information they have.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Next on the discussion of billing for water used for flood cleanup.
So we reached out to the attorney with a few more specific questions, or actually he got back to us. So what we talked about at the last meeting is correct, that it would have to go to the Board of Civil Authority for abatement of charges. They would have to sort of fill it into their 8 or 9 different criteria. He said the argument could be made potentially by a user that, you know, they could not afford it, and that's one of the potential reasons for abatement. He said, short of that, if the commission wanted to have the power to give an abatement, it would be a change in the charter, would be the proper way to do it. He did mention that the commission could put in place a policy, but it could be legally challenged as not being legal and standing up in this situation of a flooding. You know, would people really challenge that? You'd have to sort of weigh that. But I also asked, you know, if the commission put a policy in place right now, could that retroactively apply? And he hasn't gotten back to me on that one yet, but I think Barb brought that up at the last meeting. And even if a policy was in place and it wasn't 100% legally airtight, you may also be stepping out into a further limb by saying, oh, we're going to retroactively apply it to 2 months ago.
All right. So at some point, we may want to consider a policy change.
This is Bart again. I'll observe that the term of cannot afford the charges is really different than what was presented. That it was presented as a burden as opposed to,
Right.
I'm gonna have to sell my house because I can't afford the water sewer. And to be fair, we have disconnected people in the past. The water sewer system has actually disconnected people who could not afford it. So it's just, from an ethical standpoint, it's challenging to say, somebody spent another $50 or $100 on water in this period of time, and that's a burden among the other burdens they pay. But then there are arguably other people who are even more unfortunately impacted by high water sewer costs, such that like an older person who is like fixed limited income has no mortgage, but can't afford the combination of taxes, maintenance, and water sewer.
Right.
And so whose circumstances are we motivated to address is, I think, a place to start.
Right. Yeah. It would almost sound like a special fund in a sense.
And my other question is, who decides if it, like you're saying, is a burden versus a can't pay?
Right.
You
The
know, like,
BCA.
how do we make that
Yeah.
designation? You know, like when we had our water leak, it was a burden, but like, what would, if I had said I can't pay this bill, like, are you going to come look at my bank account? And how are you going to decide what's a burden versus a can't pay?
That's
When
what-
the BCA has met, when the BCA has met in the past, the burden is on the person asking for the abatement to demonstrate that they cannot pay. We're not going to go log into their accounts and see how much money they've got. If they say it's a burden, they have to be able to prove that that's the case. And in the past, we have turned down abatements when people said, well, I guess technically I can, but I just assume not. Like a guy who had almost paid off his mortgage and didn't want to take out a new one and didn't want to pay his property taxes because he'd have to take out a mortgage. You know, there's got to be that's not a burden. Somebody's got to really be able to demonstrate their inability to pay. And we have historically not just, we've also abated when somebody's barn burned down, because then the structure that they're being charged tax on isn't even there. This thing of saying you had a really unusually high usage of water due to this force majeure act of God event, and we don't think that you should have to bear that yourself, that's really forging new territory. That's not something that we've had happen with the last few years worth of abatements.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's reasonable. I think it's reasonable to consider, if you, in the memo, you know, there's a couple options. We could change our charter, or we could just have an ordinance. And the lawyer says it's very unlikely somebody would challenge the ordinance. The charter would be more legally defensible. But I think it would be worth discussing in the near future. You know, tonight, if we don't have time, do it next time. But maybe we should have an ordinance. Maybe the select board should author an ordinance that says that upon presentation of, like that 2019 memo where the select board gave the water and sewer certain powers to hear the appeal. We could pass something like that, and then the Water and Sewer Commission could look at these on a case-by-case basis. It doesn't mean that we'd have to grant any of them. It would just mean that we'd have that option.
Right.
In light of time, Morgan, maybe one thing to consider is a subset, 2 people of this commission to go contemplate this and like come up with some kind of proposal or markup. And it's my contention that it might not be just flood. It could be a leak, it could be a fire, like,
Yeah.
and it could be more than one thing.
Well, if you look at the data that we had, the 2 that had extremely high water usage, 2 of them both had breaks in their basement. We shut them off as soon as they got into their basement. Because they're like, we've got a break, we've got water running all the time. So we shut them off, and that's the 2 that had the highest usage. So sometime during the flood, their pipes broke. We didn't, nobody knew about it until we got back in, they got back into their basements and realized it. And, how much different is that than a frozen pipe when you're not around?
Right.
Or a break in a long pipe on the way to
Your farm. Okay, so, all right, well, I like the idea of circling back around to maybe the 2-person committee to.
maybe pick that up next time.
Yeah.
Hey, who wants to volunteer for that, just in light of time.
Yeah, okay. All right, update on process to measure gallons of septage receiver from haulers. Steve, you're on board.
Sure. So with our 2 septage tanks cleaned out from all the grit and stuff, we've been using the sonic measuring. And for the beginning of the month, it's a real pain. You have to physically be there, write down the things when a truck comes in, and then write down what the total gallons was that they left. But from the data, I'm pretty confident that we're essentially billing for more septage than we're taking in.
Cool.
Not all the time.
Yeah, here's the data that is about
2 weeks.
about 10 days or so. So
Yeah.
you'll see there's some up, and so a negative number here means that we billed for less, a positive number means we billed for more. So at the end of all of the deliveries, we billed for about 2,600 gallons more than was actually received. You will notice we see BPW here. They had some pretty significant, they had 2 trucks in this. I think Steve's going to keep a better eye on them as they come in, because they seem to be under-reporting. But everybody else kind of averages out. I know it's not perfect, it's not a meter, but at least it gives us some peace of mind.
It was a pretty general, I just started on the 1st of August, really taking the data and measuring every truck that came in and recording what they dropped. And not only that, but recording what the driver said they brought.
Right.
And, some of the drivers, it was pretty obvious, are really close. And other ones like the BPW are usually over. So it gave us I was pretty impressed that we were as close as we were with the totals. I mean, if you look, the actual there is 117. The driver said they left 118, and we billed for 120.
So
Yeah,
that's.
I'm very pleased we were that close.
I'm surprised.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I'm agree, Jay. That's like 2%. That's
Yeah.
not bad.
And
2%.
that's totally without a flow meter or anything, spending any money. That was just getting the tanks empty, to doing the due diligence of making sure it was there when the truck's there, writing down the number that they started with, and writing down the number was there when they left, and then fitting it into a spreadsheet. So,
Thank you for doing that, because I
Yeah.
feel like I asked you to do that.
well,
One
pretty-
point,
I think
you guys are
there
really
was a
busy,
lot of
so
people,
thank you.
and you know what? So I was curious too.
Yeah,
How close we could get, and it was just a matter of getting the tanks empty and cleaned out, so we
Yeah.
could do that. And,
That's awesome news, though.
I was pretty confident that we're right about on track.
So we're in good shape, plus we've saved at least $20,000 in equipment we don't have to purchase.
Well, right now, I mean, I'm not saying that when we do our upgrade that we don't want to include that in
Anyway.
our upgrade. I mean, it would be much nicer for billing if it was all automated.
Spoke too soon.
But right now, I feel pretty confident, you know, when a BPW truck pulls in, I try to check it. Just to try to keep them honest. But, you know, the other trucks, there were some truck drivers from P&P that they were within 10 gallons of what they said they dropped off, you know, and what they calculated. So I feel that some of those guys are pretty on the ball when they're coming in.
Great, thank you.
That's
Okay.
great.
Do they have meters on their trucks when they?
Some of the trucks do, and then some of the guys do it by, weight. I mean, Casella, which we didn't do, Casella actually has a meter on their truck. When Casella comes in, or there might be one from Casella. No, I guess there wasn't. Casella, when they come in with a tractor trailer, they actually have a meter and they give us an exact number of gallons that they dump it.
Great. Great, thank you, Steve. Update on investigating stormwater connections to wastewater systems.
I think that was the discussion with
Patrick.
Patrick.
at MSK. So I had a follow-up meeting with MSK engineers. As we talked about, we were gonna try to wrap in some of these inspections to the inspections that they were gonna do when they had to go into a structure to look at the water line, service line. They also said at the beginning of that project that they try to not go into as many structures as possible by reviewing our records and having people send them in photographs. So they said that we've got 330 structures connected to the system. They were able to determine the service line material of 250 of these structures without entering the building, which means that we only have 80 structures left to be visited. So when they visit those 80, they'll look for stormwater. They're also drawing up a separate scope of work and agreement to go into the other structures to figure out what they are doing for stormwater connections. Steve also has a few other items to potentially have them look at while they're there. And given our staffing levels right now, when we have 2 with a budget of 4, I think it probably makes sense to work with these guys to continue that project.
Ideally, I wish that our staffing levels were better right now and that we could do this on our own. Because the last time it was done, Trudy did it in 2007. And I think we could go through and we actually, there is an updated checklist for inspections of people's homes and we had, when Kendall was around, we had talked about doing this. Because as I was going into homes, there were, I would say 90% of the homes I were going into either had a stormwater hookup or they had a washer and dryer in the basement that was not backflow prevented, which could result in a backup of sewage into their house. And it's in the ordinance that they're required to have them.
Okay. So we'll continue with MSK, is it? Yep. Good, thank you. Update on contracting for water meters.
So it's taking a lot longer than I had initially hoped. I do have marked up agreements from our attorney, sent them over to Zenner and haven't heard back yet. It was end of last week I sent those over. I'm anticipating we'll have to have some sort of a call with Zenner, their attorneys, our attorney, hash this out and get it going. But our attorney has seen in the past where there's been issues with these types of agreements, so he's just looking out for us. So it's definitely taking longer, but hopefully we get to a good result in the end.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I met with Josh and we discussed, we have a fair number of meters that are failed right now. And the discussion was, we're gonna go through and install new meters, the census meters essentially in and get those meters up and running. And then we'll just have to switch the radio reads onto those census meters.
Because those are compatible with the new system. It'll just be 10 less Zener meters we buy at this point. But then we'll replace them in the future, and there's already
And it'll
about 100 on the system.
It'll basically use up our
What we haven't stopped.
inventory.
Yeah.
So that's the, to be continued.
Should we skip the items to be repaired or replaced and update to staffing and go to the staffing update?
The staffing might take 1 minute. Huh?
Yeah, but we only
Yeah,
have about. a
there
minute
is no
left.
staffing.
Okay,
We're getting
we'll
close.
skip the review list of repairs and put that on up as item A for the next meeting. Just go to update on staffing.
So, as we mentioned, the last one, we did have a candidate for superintendent who we found, he was also interested in the assistant superintendent position after Steve was promoted to superintendent. We made him an offer. He thought about it long and hard, but he's unable to make it at this point, just based on really its family concerns. He's got a young son. He's trying to, he's got a job right now, which is really close to his home. And he's able to sort of work with his schedule really well to be around his family as much as possible. He was really concerned about work-life balance where he moved to Richmond. So that's where we're at right now. We did leave the door wide open with him. If he changes his mind, give us a call. And we will be posting for water and wastewater staff, really looking for anybody from entry level on up to somebody who would have qualifications for an assistant superintendent. Trying to staff up as best we can, and that's our next step.
Say wherever we can advertise worth the money spent.
Absolutely.
The technical schools of Vermont Tech,
Right,
you never know.
absolutely, great, okay. Items for next week,
We'll have Gateway, we'll have maybe the policy for flood relief.
review of repair items.
Yep, we'll have that.
Will
There
we
may be
have-
some follow-up on the whole abatement thing. I'm going to be in Europe, but as a member of the BCA who's done abatements, I should probably somebody else needs to tell me that they'd be willing to talk to me about that, and I can find some time before I head to Europe to talk about that, so that person could then report back.
Okay,
If you want, Jay, I can go to Europe in your place.
Well, you need some soft
Sounds
parts.
good.
Yeah, I'll stop in Sweden.
And we'll have monthly water data for August.
oh, okay, great, okay. Anything else of a motion?
Will we have the update about the tank? Wasn't the diver coming soon?
No, we haven't even scheduled a diver, had to,
Okay,
I
I
had-
thought something was happening like on the 8th or the 9th or something.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe. Okay,
the divers aren't even scheduled because we don't have,
Okay.
you just approved the PO, I had to get the PO. for
that's
the
fine. I thought
Mixer
there
to get here.
I thought there was something that was happening right about the same time as our meeting, but. I'm new.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
David's moved.
Bard, second?
Vote to adjourn the meeting.
Aaron, I.
David, I.
Jay, aye.
Organized, meeting adjourned.